Welcome, my name is Colleen Tauke and I'm the sewing specialist here at Fons and Porter. In this Quilting Quickly tutorial, I'm going to show you how to put together the table runner called Calypso. If you'd like to purchase this pattern, please visit our website. Okay, we're going to be working with a background fabric and 5-inch squares. Now I have different 5-inch squares here in front of me, but you can use a traditional print, you can use a batik, you could use really wild prints. It's up to you to make the flavor. So Calypso was the fabrics that I had in my sewing space and thought they made kind of a nice summer looking table runner for my kitchen. And it's a cathedral window, and I've got a small sample here. This is a very traditional block. It can be done by hand, but we've converted it to doing it by machine and made the sizes, the blocks oversized to accommodate a 5-inch square, which is a charm kind of 5-inch square in the centers. So let's get started. What we need to do is create that background that everything, all those little squares sit on. So what we do, and in this case, since we're using 5-inch squares in each of the windows, we're starting with a 16-inch piece of background fabric. So from that 16, what we need to do is right size together, and we need to sew on the short ends a 1/4-inch seam on both ends. So I've got one of those done. Let's just lay it on top. So I've sewn with red here. You would want to do a coordinating thread, but I've got a 1/4-inch seam on both ends. Now what we need to do is kind of reposition, because what we need to do is close this. So we're realigning, lay that back out again, take it from this position where there's a pocket at the top. We're going to match seams, and we're going to sew across the space. I'm going to kind of offset my seams here, kind of like we do when we're doing piecing on our patchwork. I'm going to put a pin in there so that they lay flat. I'm going to stitch from one side of the fold here across. I'm going to stitch to about halfway across, and then I'm going to make a break because I want to be able to have a turning spot as if we're making a pillow. So I'm going to jump a 2-inch space and then finish out that section. Now, traditionally a lot of people made these blocks by hand, and it was a way that they could work and be with their families and still do their hand stitching and create these gorgeous cathedral window quilts. And we've kind of, like I said, adapted it to be a little bit more modern, larger pieces. You get kind of a taste of the flavor of it. Maybe you'll be making a cathedral window quilt in your future. Okay, get a ways down. I'm going to tie off, break thread, and I'm going to move my needle down a ways, leaving that gap there. I'm going to tie off again and finish out this seam across. And you can see there that I left an opening. So, kind of looks like an inverted pillow at this point. What I need to do is I need to trim the corners. If you come from a garment sewing kind of construction, you'll remember trimming corners like this. What I'm doing is just a small diagonal cut close to the seam, but not through that seam, just to reduce the bulk at the outer corners. Then I'm going to turn the entire thing right side out. If you're going to be creating a large table, or like the table runner, or even a larger piece like this, you could go through and stitch all of these portions at once and then sit down and turn all of them. It'd be great TV work because you don't have to have a table in front of you when you're working, or the sewing machine at this point. So I'm just going around to each of the corners and kind of poking out the corner with my finger. Since this is large, it turns really easily. And I've got one point here left to kind of pop out. There. So as your fingernail slides into that point. Now once you get them all turned like this, you're going to take these to the ironing board and you're going to press this flat. So I've got one already stitched, but we did one in progress so you could actually see the process. And I know that's going to be kind of hard to pick up on the video because it's cream like my background. But the traditional cathedral window used an unbleached muslin as the background because it let all the little pops of color in the small squares then jump out. Now, once you get this pressed, you're going to be bringing each of the outer corners to the center. And simple like this. Sometimes, because we only have 2 hands, we need a third. If you just put a pin in to hold that in place, as you bring your corners in, and then you can hit it with an iron and give it a press along these edges. And you're going to do that all the way around. Now I've got some that are already prepared, so finish it off by bringing the last 2 pieces in. If it kind of reminds you of a cootie catcher, I think, that we had a little game with when we were in grade school, kind of reminds me of that, bringing all the points in. So like this, and I've got another one prepared, the same exact method. So I've got 4 flaps. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to join 2 of these together, because where the fabrics actually ride, those little charm squares, is in this space. So I need to bring these together. So what I'm going to do is pull up 2 flaps, and I've got a nice crease along there, so that when I pick this up, I'm going to lay this back like this. I'm just going to put a couple of pins in. I've got those fold lines lined up one over the top of the other. The most critical point is at the corner intersections. So I'm going to stitch from here across the block to here. And I have some of that done. Got one done here. I'll lay it back in the exact same position I have mine that's unsewn. So this one's pinned. That sewing line now is here. You can see the red line going across the block. Now when I lay it back, back opened up, here's my 2 flaps, and here's where my 5-inch square is going to be. But if it's like this or even larger, I just keep connecting blocks, I need to have more. So going back. That's why I said if you're in the sewing mood, just keep sewing, get a bunch of them prepared, press a bunch, and then start to join them together. Because once you've joined them into short rows like this, then you can join onto a larger piece, and I would join here along this fold next. And see, you're starting to get that table runner effect. Now, once you've gotten these attached together, you want to go back and see where these are all joined together, they're the 4 flaps we had. I've got these already stitched. I'll point this out. At this intersection where the little tips, those noses come together, I've gone in and stitched with the sewing machine, just a few stitches across, kind of making an X. And I used a matching thread to my background because I don't really want to see them, but they need to hold those points together. And then again, down here, I did the same thing. You can see the stitching holds those tips in place. That means that then it's ready for me to come in and do the 5-inch squares. I'll take this one out. We'll just work on a 4 patch of it for now so that you can see. What I can do is there are 4 places for me to place blocks. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Once I lay this in place and start to roll these edges, because these are a bias fold, you'll notice the effect of that window starting to appear, just like the block next to me. What we need to do is go in and stitch that curve down. And I have some smaller pins. These are applique pins. They're a shorter pin, and they help me maneuver under the machine without getting stabbed, basically. So I can roll this fabric back, and it's going to hide the outer edge of my 5-inch block. And I can put my pins in there so that as I approach, I can take them out. And roll here also. The idea is to bring these 2 corners into a nice point here. And you can do that kind of manipulation when you get to the sewing machine with a stiletto or a T-pin or a hat pin. Once you've got it under the machine, you can kind of adjust those spots for the stitching. I'll just pin in one more spot, and then we'll actually stitch a little bit here. Okay, you can use a decorative stitch, you could use a decorative thread, or you can match thread. I have red thread in the sewing machine that we use for demo a lot, so you'll be able to see where I've stitched at. And a stiletto would be a great tool at this point. So it helps me kind of adjust and hold the tip of the turned edge as it approaches the presser foot. So let me get my thread back out of the way here. And I'm sewing just about 1/8 of an inch or so from that fold. Once you've done a few of them, it goes pretty quick. Okay, I'm gonna take up my little pin as I approach. Use the stiletto to hold the fold out here on the very outer corner of my block. When I get to that outside edge and the point, I'm going to leave my needle in place and then pivot my entire project, leaving that needle down, put the presser foot back down, go in and kind of nudge that over with the tip of my stiletto, and then taking the pin out as I approach. I don't know how straight my stitching will be, but you'll get the effect of what I'm doing. If I was matching thread, you wouldn't probably be able to see too much. But we keep that kind of method all the way around each of the blocks. And I'll take it out so you can see what I've accomplished there. So I've stitched 2 sides of the curve here, and I would just keep going in that fashion by rolling this one back and continuing on around. Now there's one more place that you can create a curve if you like. On the table runner you see behind me, on the outer edge where the cream, there are no inset fabrics here, but I did turn that edge back to kind of create that melon shape, and that is found here on this outer edge here. So you can turn those back and stitch those also to kind of create that, like I said, like a melon shape on the outer edge. So Cathedral Windows and Calypso. Maybe it's in your future. If you'd like to see more of our Quilting Quickly tutorials, please visit our website. Thanks for joining me today.